Have you ever heard of forever stew, also known as hunter's pot or perpetual stew? I had not until I had, and it's something that I think is truly amazing and perfect for anyone that is interested in living off-grid, having a homestead, or preparing for the future that we all see is coming. What is perpetual stew? A perpetual stew is a pot into which whatever one can find is placed into and cooked. The pot is never or rarely emptied all the way, and ingredients and liquid are replenished as necessary. Almost every mention of perpetual stew cites a single source, Food in History by Ray Tannehill. Published in 1972, Tannehill's book explains that medieval peasants would rarely empty out their cauldron, except in preparation for the meatless weeks of Lent. The rest of the time, the cauldron sat above the fire for weeks on end. Any available food was simply thrown in. The medieval perpetual stew, she says, was an ever-changing broth, enriched daily with whatever was available. A hare, hen, or pigeon would give it a fine, meaty flavor. The taste of salted pork or cabbage would linger for days, even weeks. Poor families in medieval Europe often ate a stew-like concoction called pottage, and in some cases, the same kettle of pottage remained on the fire for several days. Ingredients were added as they became available, and the thick, soupy meal was in steady supply to feed growing families and guests. A perpetual stew was maintained in Perpignan from the 15th century until World War II. Between August 2014 and April 2015, a New York restaurant served broth from the same perpetual stew, a master stock, for over 8 months. Watan Panich restaurant in Bangkok, Thailand, has continued to maintain the broth from the same perpetual stew for over 46 years. One of the things that makes perpetual soup special is the ever-changing flavor of the broth depending on the ingredients added on any given day. Parsnips and carrots add a natural sweetness, while roasted beef bones add a savory flavor and a deep and rich amber color to the broth. A lot of recipes for skilly or perpetual soup call for the addition of fish bones and fish heads, in addition to shellfish in the shell. What is the difference between a stock and a broth? In a word, it's salt. A stock is a decoction of flavor from vegetables and meat bones, or fish and shellfish. A broth occurs after salt is added to the stock. Salt is optional in perpetual soup, especially if you or someone is on a sodium-restricted diet. You'll find also that the richness of the soup grows and develops with time, and salt may not be missed as a flavoring ingredient. You may have also heard about the benefits of bone broth. It's very popular in paleo diets, and many people have taken to making it for its health benefits. In a nutshell, bone broth has various minerals like calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and potassium. It's the calcium in particular that promotes bone health, and is particularly beneficial for the elderly who sometimes suffer from bone degeneration. It also contains gelatin, which is very soothing and healing to the gut, and the gelatin and dissolved cartilage can help with stiff joints and arthritic conditions. Adding just 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in the pot will accelerate and facilitate the release of vital minerals from bones in the pot. You won't taste it because it's such a small amount relative to the amount of water, but it does a great job of enriching the broth with calcium and other minerals. Poultry carcasses are super easy for perpetual soup. The turkey, duck, or chicken has been roasted or boiled, and the remaining meat on the carcass along with the bones will do nicely in a bone broth for a perpetual soup. Beef or pork bones should be roasted, especially beef bones identified in a grocery store as soup bones. You can easily find these in any ethnic grocery store and some regular stores as well. Roast any raw bones on a cookie sheet or baking pan at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 45 minutes, or until the meat on the bones has caramelized. This will lend a rich amber color to the broth and a savory flavor. Don't forget a splash of apple cider vinegar as well. Some vegetables are perfect for perpetual soup. Others are not so great. Onions and carrots are a good example of a go-to vegetable for a great broth and perpetual soup. Beets can become problematic because they will color everything red from the broth to the vegetables. You'll want to think twice about any vegetable because all of the flavors meld together. Some vegetables are highly flavorful and can dominate the flavor profile of the soup. Here is a list of Perpetual soup friendly veggies and some that can give an off or highly polarizing flavor. Good vegetables to use in your soup would be onions, carrots, celery, parsnips, rutabagas, kale, spinach, and green onions. Not the best vegetables or herbs would be garlic, beets, turnips, cauliflower, radishes, broccoli. The reason why is a lot of these have very dominant flavors, will either color your food red, or some people don't like the taste and it lasts. Like garlic is great if you love it, but if you don't like garlic, it's going to be in your soup for a very long time. So do not add garlic if you don't like it. Personally, I think you should add garlic because garlic is an antiviral. It also is just very good for you and it tastes amazing. Other ingredients to avoid include things like pasta, rice, or bread, which unfortunately many recipes for Perpetual soup call for. These ingredients can be cooked and added after a bowl if filled with broth, but adding these ingredients to the pot can create a problem. Pasta, like macaroni noodles or any rice, will maintain their integrity for a day, but as time goes on, they tend to soften and dissolve. The result is a mushy, pasty texture and color. Starches in any form don't last long in any liquid over a period of time and can ruin a great batch of Perpetual soup if blindly added to the broth. So here's how to make your own Perpetual soup. First, you want to start with pure spring water. Avoid well water, which can have an iron aftertaste, or tap water, which can have residual flavors from fluoride to chlorine. You can filter water if you like, but bottled spring water is best. Next, you'll need beef bones, soup bones, pork bones, and poultry carcasses. If you want a fish broth, you can use fish bones or fish heads or shellfish like a crawfish, shrimp, clams, and mussels. Next, you'll need vegetables from the good-to-go list. If you are just using them to infuse the broth, they can be large and uncut or cut coarsely. If you plan to eat the vegetables as part of the soup, cut them so they are spoon size. Lastly, you want to season to taste. This includes salt, pepper, bay leaves, herbs like basil or thyme, and green leafy vegetables like kale or spinach. In the wild, you can add dandelion greens, plantain leaves, clover, or purslane. Directions. First, you add the water to a crock pot until the pot is about 2/3 full. Turn the heat to high and add the bones and vegetables. Cover the crock pot. When the soup comes to a boil, reduce the heat to low and allow to simmer overnight. 12 to 24 hours is ideal. Then taste the soup in the morning and season to suit your taste. Remove the bones and discard. Reduce the soup to warm and help yourself. To replenish the soup, add more water, vegetables, and meat bones or meat scraps. Put the crock pot on high and bring to a boil for 15 minutes. Adjust the seasonings and put the crock pot on warm. Continue with this replenish cycle over the days and weeks. If you want a pure broth, strain the soup through cheesecloth layered in a colander. If you want to eat the vegetables in the soup, remove the bones and dig in. You can also add rice that you cooked using the broth or simply make rice that way as a side dish. Pastas can also be cooked separately and added to a bowl of soup. But whether you eat it as a soup or sip it as a bone broth, Perpetual soup will forever please your palate. Have you ever heard of Perpetual stew, Hunter's stew, or Hunter's pot, or Forever stew? I'm sure there's some other names that you've heard of as well. I'd love to hear whatever you know about it, as it's something that's completely new to me, but I will definitely be including it in my meal preps and my life as soon as I get ready on my bus. I can't do it in the cabin right now, but once we get ready on the bus and the tiny house, we will have a crock pot of bone broth, stew, whatever you want to call it, all the time, because it is so healthy for you. I'm going to do a separate video on just like the health of bone broth and what it does to your body and why everyone should be having some every day. But please let me know what you think about this. Will you be adding it to your preps or your recipe books, or even right now, or will you just be using it for the apocalypse? I'm so excited to learn about things like this because power and energy is something that is so precious during times of emergency, and to know that you don't have to worry about refrigeration so much, you can just worry about the heat. That takes a lot of, at least for me, stress off of my mind. So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you do make some soup, I'd love to see some pictures, put some links down there so we can all cheer each other on. If you have any recipes or experience with it, also please share below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all soon. Make sure to stay safe, pray for one another, and be kind. Love you. Bye.